Yo, 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 welcome back to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris, I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. Episode 214 today, which every time I'm still amazed that this is where we're at and that continuous progress that we're making in having these episodes every week. And I appreciate everyone's support, whether you're here for the first time, you've been here for a few episodes, or if you've been here for a long time or since the start. It really does mean the world to me. And the first thing I'll just like to say, if you do enjoy these episodes, please make sure you like, subscribe, and if you want to continue the conversation from anything that we talk about today, please jump down below into the comments and we can get into a conversation. If you're just listening via audio, you can also jump over to the YouTube and continue that conversation as well. Today we're talking about a whole bunch of different hard truths. I love listening and hearing from Alex Homozi. He's an amazing individual, and he's had great success, and his journey has come from a lot of hardships or hard truths or things that he's had to work through and break through and get through in order to really succeed in his business. And he runs over a portfolio of businesses over $100 million and does some crazy and amazing things. So really inspirational, obviously really different to kind of like what I'm doing in terms of reselling on eBay and things like that. But there's so many different things there that I can take and learn from to get his perspective of someone doing things at scale. But I also felt, after listening to his own journey and talking about some of the hard truths that we all need to hear, I found that there's a lot of these that are actually super relevant for our life, like parallels to life. And if you want to further your lifestyle, I mean, that's why you're here. That's the podcast. But these are super relevant. So I've picked out I wouldn't say it's all of them, but majority of the key insights that I've taken away from this, from listening to his episode. This was a podcast that he did not that long ago. We talk about a whole bunch of different things, but I want to go through and just kind of like talk about it, understand it, chat about it, but also give you some challenges. I'll probably prompt a few things, maybe even answer a few things and share how that has related to me and my own journey, and really play it back to you guys, because sometimes it's great to be able to hear it from one person, but hearing things from other people and different perspectives really does go the extra mile in helping us really understand or get that full value out of something, because perception can really change how we conceive or understand understanding of something. So that's the plan today. If this sounds like something you're interested in, buckle up, get cozy, and let's roll the intro and let's get into it. Alright, so we will keep it kind of short and sweet in terms of not adding context, but diving straight in terms of the first theme area is pain, progress, and growth. And one of the key, or the first points that he goes on to talk about is pain is the price of progress, growth being physical, mental, or business. It all hurts. And if you want change, you got to get comfortable with discomfort. Now, I think this is a really interesting point, because a lot of the time we think, hard work is just everything, but you can do hard work physically, you can do hard work mentally, you can do hard work in business, you can do hard work in so many different components of your life, and they're all going to be slightly different. Some of us are happy to do hard work in terms of physical work, but some of us hate to do the hard work when it comes to doing our numbers in our business. Or, people hate to do the hard work when it comes to having really tough conversations. So these are all relevant points to our life in all aspects. So you really got to ask yourself, it's like, where do you struggle? Where do you thrive when it comes to some of the harder things that you need to do in order to grow? But the key thing is like, well, with all that in mind, it's like, well, if you want to get comfortable with the discomfort, well, then you have to do more of the discomfort to get comfortable with it. And there's probably a lot of pains that we're currently avoiding, which is actually going to help us get to the next level. So I ask you, it's like, what are the things that you're putting off, knowing that if you just actually do this, then you're actually probably going to get to where you want to be? He actually goes on and talk about that a lot of the time, the easiest way is actually going to be the hardest way, because you're trying to find all these shortcuts and you've wasted so much time, when really, if you just did it the hardest way first, it's actually probably going to be the quickest way and the best way, because one, you're going to grow, you're going to get through that, and then that's going to become the new normal, and you actually level up with it. So I thought that was really, really interesting, because I feel like we do that a lot of the time in our lives. And, we should ask ourselves, when was the last time that we stretched ourselves mentally, emotionally, physically, all these different ways? Because, like I said, some of us are going to thrive mentally with, these challenges. Some of us are going to thrive emotionally. Maybe you're really good with people, or maybe you're really good at being open in your relationships. Physically, maybe you hate physical labor work, right? So it's going to be different for everyone. But ask yourself and keep yourself honest, right? The next point that he goes on to say is you can't want progress and ease at the same time. They're just incompatible pursuits. You can't have it easy and then want progress. Now, you can ask yourself, if this was easy, what would it look like? But in order to make that, you need to then go do the hard work in making that happen. And a lot of the time, when we realize that, it's the easy way is the hard way, we tend to then realize maybe this is not what I want. And that's what separates the people that make huge action and I guess become the outliers in society or in your community or in your, ecosystem space. But the thing is that, like, we know what we have to do, but why don't we do it? And it really comes down to, mindset and motivation, which we're going to touch on shortly. But there was another point there that he talks about with pain, progress, and growth, which was the work works on more than you work on it. So I'll say that again. The work works on you more than you work on it. So basically this is saying that the process transforms the person more than the result rewards them. And I think that's what I love about doing all the things that I do, building my business and going through all the problems that I have to solve. Like, we're nowhere near where I want to be, but we're continuously learning how to do things better. We're learning to grow. We're continuing to increase our top line revenue and increasingly growing in terms of opportunities and all these things that we can do. You get another problem. Okay, how do we solve this? What do we have to do? These aren't showstoppers. They're simply just obstacles and things that we have to figure out and get through. And through that, I become a better version of myself because I am, making progress over comfort. I don't want to be comfortable doing my business because if I'm comfortable, I get complacent and then we're not going to be able to thrive. And the business needs to thrive. It needs to be continuously growing because we're competing against so many different people and so many different elements that we can't afford to slow down. So, for me, it's the same thing in life. If you want something, the only person you're competing against is no one else but yourself. So if you're happy with where you are, then sure. But if you're not, the only thing you can do is start to get out there and get uncomfortable. And that's how you make progress and growth, through pain. So the second section was about mindset and motivation. Now, his first hard truth was be happy, but not satisfied. So when we're content, that's healthy, but complacency will kill your progress. So contentment is healthy, but complacency will kill your progress. So if you're not actually, being happy, but actually the multiple components here. So obviously if you're not happy, you need to do something about it. But if you're happy, don't then become complacent and just settle for that, right? Because there's a difference between being happy and being satisfied. I'm happy. I am very happy with where we are, but I am not satisfied with the results that we're getting. I know we can do better. I know there's more out there. So therefore, I'm not going to get complacent with the happiness. I'm going to continue to progress until I'm satisfied with that result. The catch here is, what's the end game? Or when do you stop? When is enough enough? That's going to be different for everyone. So the next point was, fear exists in the vague, not the specific. And I think this is really interesting because when I heard this, I realized that, why do I become more comfortable with getting uncomfortable? And it's because I'm able to break through the darkness of the fear. And what I mean by this, if you break your fears down, they don't have the power over you. If you can break them down and understand, what are we trying to achieve here? What do we have to do? What does worst case look like? What does best case look like? But if you're just saying I want to make $1 million this year, that's scary because you don't know how you're going to do it. But when you start to break it down and you get very specific about what are you going to do? What's the action plan? How do I do it? You can actually start to realize this is actually isn't the hardest thing in the world. It's going to be hard, but it's more tangible in perceiving that this is possible. And I think that's what we tend to forget. If we want to go, lose 50 kilos, that is hard stuff. But if you want to lose just a kilo a week, that's probably quite doable, right? You break it down to a week and then you do it for 50 weeks, which is a year, that's 52 kilos, right? So that's why it's really important to really kind of get specific with what you're trying to break through. The next truth was about the goal isn't success, it's about doing the work. Hard work becomes the reward when you truly love the game. Now, yeah, I want to be successful, but I think if you are taking action, if you're continuously progressing, you're already being successful. It's about your action, the success. The success that I'm talking about here, the reward is actually that you're actually continuously doing the work, because that's the hard part. The reward is the easy part from doing the hard stuff. You do the hard stuff, you get the reward. That's a win. But if you don't do the hard stuff, you don't get the success. You don't get the goals. You don't get the rewards. Therefore, that's going to suck, right? So the only way to see that through is when you truly love what you do, because it makes it easier to do the hard work. Couple of questions here for you. What would happen if you stopped needing things to be perfect before starting? I mean, this one for me, I get stuck up on this, right? And I'm starting to learn to continuously let go of this, because when we let go of things and realize that, my 100% is probably going to be someone else's, maybe they're going to have to do like 110, 150%, because everything that I do is my passion, my love, my thing that I own and accountable to. So I have to get comfortable that my 80% is probably going to be their 100% if I'm delegating it to someone else, right? And that's not because I just have it all figured out. It's just because that's the way I like it, right? So it's a keep it honest kind of statement. What's one belief you're holding that might be giving away your power? Now, I think this sometimes really comes down to the fear. We get stuck on the unknowns, or what if it doesn't work out? But what if it does? So you probably need to break through and work through some of those things that are holding you back, and understand how do we actually break through on that a little bit more. And that's I know that's easier said than done. Are you being happy but not satisfied, or have you become complacent? So we spoke about that. And I create chaos for myself when I want to thrive, because if I get complacent, I force myself to have to grow, to have to solve a problem, to have to be able to make things work, give myself constraints, because when you give yourself pressure, just like, diamonds are formed under pressure, you start to prioritize what are super important things to be done, and that's when you get it done. Which leads to the next part, which is focus and productivity. So commitment equals elimination of alternatives. I love this, because focus isn't about doing more, it's about doing less, but better. And it really comes back to that creating chaos. When I have so many things that I need to achieve or do or get done in my priorities list, you start to focus on what is most important, how do you do things efficiently, and how do you get things done in the same amount of time if you're doing more. So it's super important that we eliminate all the alternative things, because the only way to do it is this way. So you go do it. You run through adrenaline, you smash through the hard way, you get it done, and you have a good result. I love it. Absolutely love it. The next one is selective productivity is greater than productivity hacks. So the suggestion here is, what he was saying was, productivity comes from what you don't do. And I think this is interesting, because sometimes we go into a process and we do so many different things, and then we're like, oh, this isn't working, let's change the process. When usually I think what we want to start with is actually eliminate things from the process. Is this required? Versus, is it, a nice to have? Does it actually make a big impact later down the line? This is some of the stuff that I've always spoken about when I'm working with my team around. Sometimes we get a defect on some clothing, and, maybe the clothing's worth $50. But I said, well, at the end of the day, if we list it with the defect and we call it out, it doesn't usually mean that it's not going to sell. It just means we're going to sell it less. But then there's been other times when, with the lighting and like wrinkles and certain things, we've kind of pulled back on that a little bit, because if we're getting all the other things right, we might not have the perfect photos, but they're good enough to be able to give everyone the confidence to buy. It doesn't usually then make a huge difference if we don't, for instance, if we didn't have 24 photos, but we had 16 photos, it's not going to be a huge outlier in terms of it's going to mean that the item doesn't sell. So we don't have to do 24 photos. We just need to do as many photos as it means that it's going to give the confidence for the buyer to make a decision to purchase, right? So that's been a very interesting one for me. The next one was, one ladder works if you build it high enough. Now this was interesting, because doing 5 things halfway gets you nowhere, but if you do one thing all the way, it gets you over the wall. And how many times this has been something that I've struggled with because I do the podcast, which is this. I've had my YouTube content, I've had my business, and I've had a few other things. When you start to do too many things all at the same time, you're not going to be able to get to where you want to go. But when you double down and focus and put your intention more boxed and focused, you're able to get over that wall. So, a couple of questions for you. What are you currently doing that's stealing time from you that matters the most? And 2, what could you eliminate this week or this month or, in your next phase to move faster on the one thing that matters? All right? What are the things that are irrelevant? Do not make a difference. There's so many things that we do, we think are productive, but actually they create more problems. The next area was execution and action. You don't fail because the plan is bad. You fail because you don't stick to the plan. That's why. Very, very key. Number 2 was decisiveness equals power. So the quicker the gap between decision and action, the more powerful you can become. And this is, again, why I like to create chaos, because it forces me to take action, do the work, and make a decision based on the facts that we know. When you're informed and you have the information that you need to be able to perform, you can make a decision. And when you don't have the luxury of time, you can make a decision with decisiveness, which means it gives you the power to execute quickly. Perfect timing is a myth. Persistence is the only real way to time it right. This is true. So, they talk about this with the share market. It's not about, timing the market. It's about time in the market. The idea is you want to continuously put in the reps, because over a long period of time, you're always going to outweigh your competitors or the person you're competing against, because you're going to have more experience and more reps. So you're able to do things easier, right? And you have more opportunity for that. Because you know how to do something, you can say yes to it. If someone doesn't know how to do something, they have to say no to it. Therefore, they cannot do it. So it's not they could have all the money in the world to be able to go, yeah, I can buy this. But if they don't know how to do it, it doesn't really enable them to process through it or progress through it. So sometimes, there is people that get lucky with right place at the right time, but there is still that component of do you say yes or do you say no? And that is why persistence is the only really way to time it right, because when you have the ability to be able to say, yeah, I've got the experience and I know how to do this, then when you say yes to something, you can execute with it. Coming back to the decisiveness as well. Consistency beats talent. Now, this one I think is interesting. It talks about, he talks about show up, keep showing up, and the skill will come. Now, there is a component of this where you need to, you can learn skills, right? You can learn how to play the drums. You can learn how to play the guitar. You can learn how to be a reseller. You can learn how to make a podcast. There's going to be people that are naturally more talented at this, which gives them the beat over consistency. But if you be consistent, then you will potentially outweigh the talented naturally. So, question for you. Have you made a plan you're not following? Or worse, one that you keep abandoning? And number 2 was, what excuse are you still holding onto that's delaying your success? Jeez. Next area is a tough one, is dealing with critics and judgment. And I thought this was a really great perspective. He talks about how critics will die and their opinions will too. So don't give them the power now, because it's never going to matter. So why should it matter now? I thought that was really good. It's a great perspective, and I know it's easier said than done, but it's still a great perspective. The next one was, don't give away your power. By blaming others, it gives them control over your life, so take it back. Right? When we blame others, we don't take ownership, we don't take accountability. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But sometimes we let others dictate who we are, what we can do. We've spoken about this so many different times, but it was great to hear it from someone that's way further up, and he had some really great examples. Shame equals other people's rules. Guilt equals your rules. So when you feel ashamed, it's because you've broken someone else's rules. When you feel guilt, it's because you've broken your own. So you want to know, whose rules are you playing by? Are you playing by yours, or are you playing by other people's rules? If you're playing by other people's rules, then have no shame. Do what you want to do. But when you get guilty, when you feel guilty, that's because you haven't abided by your rules. So, question, whose opinion are you afraid of, and why do they matter so much to you? Number 2, are you letting someone else's imagined reaction control your reality? That was a good one. And then number 3 was, would you rather be disapproved by others or disappoint yourself? I'd rather disappoint others. Let's talk about courage, risk, and regret. So the first truth here was trade short pain for long-term gain, right? I love this. We talk about this all the time. And to me, I've got this. I'm happy to do short-term pain to have that long-term gain. And avoiding that discomfort now only guarantees regret later. So you got to just get in there, get gritty, get in the detail, roll up the sleeves and figure out how to do it. If it's 1 year, 5 years, whatever. If you're talking over 50 years, it's nothing. So just really understand what are you going into with conviction. The next one was rejection versus regret. You want to choose which is your pain. Winners fear regret more than they fear rejection. And it's coming back to, who are we trying to seek approval from? Is it ourselves or other people? Your fear of regret must outweigh your fear of rejection. And that's true. That was the main reason why I decided to do what I did and step away from the 9 to 5, because I realized if I don't do it now when I have the opportunity, I think I'll regret it more later. Even if it meant I failed, I can still go do other things. But down the line, it's harder to do that. So I did not want to regret it. So I made that hard decision to do it. So, question. What fear is guiding your decisions more than it should be? What decisions are you putting off because of the fear of rejection? And then this is a good one. Fast forward to 5 years from now. What would you regret not doing today? And this was one of the decisions, or one of the helping deciding factors that I leant on when it came to, investing into the warehouse, which is going to cost me $150,000 over the next 5 years. But by looking at it, I realized, well, it did cost us, it actually cost us a lot more for the startup for the first, 3 months, about $47,000. But the way I looked at it is like, if $47,000 ensures and enables that we can continuously thrive over the next 5 years, I'm going to look back in 5 years' time and think I would have done double that. I probably would have done triple that. So yeah, that's my perspective on that. All right, we're almost there. Bear with me. Discipline and endurance. Learn to endure. The fastest way to become the person you want to be is to remove the option to quit. I mean, it's simple. It seems simple, and it is, but who does it, right? Number 2 was necessity is the mother of invention. Constraints create breakthroughs. Love this. Chaos. When I give myself chaos, it forces me to grow, it forces me to move, and it forces me to execute. Love that one. The hard way is the only way. We spoke about this before. Shortcuts don't exist, right? You can't get to $1 million by, 1, 2, 3, skip a few, 999,000, and then you're on $1 million. It just doesn't work. You have to go through A to B, and then B to C, and continue on. That's the only way. So, questions for you are you mistaking a lack of results for failure when the truth is you haven't actually stuck long enough with it? So many times. What skill or habit could radically change your life if you had committed to it for just 1 year? And that's the thing. I see so many people, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. Let it out. But you don't stick to it. Stick to it. And then the other one is, are you chasing complexity with consistency? Are you chasing complexity when consistency is the real missing ingredient? It's not about being the best. It's about being the best at showing up, right? And putting in the reps, because your best then comes from showing up and putting in your best effort. And then you become the best at what you do. Let's talk accountability and ownership. Results are greater than excuses. Every time. You might be right, but it's still your problem. And this is interesting, because we can say we're going to do all these different things, but you have to do them, right? And even if you say that, you're capable of doing all these different things, you might be right, but it is still your problem that you have to solve for, right? So deal with it. Do what is required, not your best, right? Now, I know I said before that, by showing up to do your best, you're going to get the results. But the way he said it was, your best can and must get better. So that's what I'm saying. So if you show up to do what is required, by you doing what is required, you're going to do whatever it is to get that done, which at the point in time is that best version of that. But we know that that is not your full potential best. So your best can and must get better. But the only way is to do what is required, work through it, you can get better at it, therefore you can become better and your best. Does that make sense? Number 3 was for accountability and ownership was excuses are permission slips for mediocrity, right? So if you want to take it easy, if you want to be complacent, have excuses. Own it though, right? Know that's what you're living with. Settle with it and own it, right? Otherwise, if you're not happy, take ownership, take accountability, and do some work. So 3 questions. What's stopping you from moving forward? Really? What's the story you keep telling yourself, and is it all still true? And what rules are you living by that you never agreed to? Now that kind of comes back from earlier section, but there's all these excuses that we say, oh, he said I can't do this. Well, who cares? He said you can't do it, right? If he doesn't think you're capable of doing it, prove him wrong. But again, why are you living by someone else's standards and expectations, right? Do you think you can do it? Do you want to do it? Go do it. The second last one is identity and self-mastery. So you are your biggest threat, not your competition, but you, the unfulfilled version of you. So if you don't do what you need to do today to get to where you want to be in, 5 years, you're the only person to blame for that. But at the same time, if you want to be, if you reflect on where you were a year ago, you can see that you have absolutely smashed that person in terms of, you go back and if you were competing, you're absolutely beating them, right? Well, hopefully that's what you can see. Can you hear the kookaburras in the background? Got some kookaburras. It's here in the morning and it's quite nice to have the kookaburras singing. I do apologize if it's too loud. You want to outwork your self-doubt. Repetition beats insecurity because it just pushes it out of the way because you get confident. And confidence is earned through action, right? So when we take action, when we repeat, doing the stuff that makes us uncomfortable and makes us feel insecure, we will become more confident. Therefore, we can outwork our self-doubt. Most people are self-doubt about it because they don't know how to do it. So therefore, we don't do it because we're too scared. But if you actually just give it a go, get through it, work over it, you're going to be better at it. Therefore, you can have the confidence. Habituation is what he said is the cure for fear. So when we expose ourselves to things, it shrinks the anxiety. I remember when I purchased my first wholesale order, it was about $1,000, $1,500. That was scary. We've purchased 10 times that amount in terms of one single transaction, numerous times now. And I'm more comfortable with it because you get comfortable knowing what works and what doesn't. So, a couple of questions. If you're not living up to your potential, who or what are you blaming? What would it look like to play the cards you do have instead of complaining about the ones you don't have? And what would you change if you focused less on proving others wrong and more on proving yourself right? I mean, this stuff is so simple, but it can just be complex because we're so scared and we're so stuck on all these different things. But when we actually realize that through clarity, action, and ownership, we can actually win. And this is how I'll finish it up. So he says 3 things. Clarity comes from action. Like walking through fog, you can only be taking steps till you see which is the next step to take, right? So you go slow. You take a step at a time, you figure it out, and then you continue to take action. The other thing is, he said, was ask, whose voice is stopping me? A lot of the time, he talks about it's just 1 or 2 people that are holding power in your head. You're trying to prove it to someone else, or someone else is saying that you're not capable of doing this. Stuff them. What do you want? And how are you going to get there? Let that voice be your voice that's encouraging you and motivating you and pushing you to go to where you want to be. And number 3 was play the cards you're dealt. You want to stop avoiding your strengths to make others feel comfortable. A lot of the time, we don't realize it. And I've spoken about this before. We all have disadvantages. We all have disadvantages. We also have unfair advantages over other people, which gives them disadvantages. And if you've been dealt a pair of cards that give you the opportunity to go do something, that means you're better at someone else, leverage that. Own it. It's your strength, right? Why would you not? So don't be scared to do that. Don't be scared to play your cards. They're your cards. They're going to be better at something else than you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it because it's unfair because they didn't have that opportunity. You've been given the opportunity to do what you can. You're also going to have some really, big weaknesses as well. Those you can't do anything about. Yeah, you can try and strengthen them too, but work with what you got, whether it's highs and lows in different areas of your life, move forward, And that's the main focus it should be. He did actually finish up with a couple of little like quotables or nuggets that he kind of wanted people to take away. And I've taken a few that I enjoyed that I think are really relevant to me. So I'm going to play them back to you and then we're going to wrap it up. Hard work is the goal. Everything else is a consequence. You can time everything perfectly if your intention is to never stop. We spoke about that one. The world belongs to those who can keep doing without seeing the result of their doing. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And with this, it's like, it's about trusting your gut, knowing where you're going. I mean, yeah, you got to check in, you got to review what you're doing, but that one, look, it can get it's a little bit iffy in terms of how to understand it. It's more about knowing that if you keep doing this, you keep putting in the consistency, you keep putting in the reps, the results are coming regardless. And it's not about you having to see the results, but it's about trusting the process. The next one was don't confuse the fog of uncertainty with the absence of a path. Greatness rejects all first-time applicants. This is true. When you go to try something, it's not going to work out the first time. Do it the second time. It's going to be a little bit better. And what offends you is going to control you. Great stuff. Like, I really love, hearing the perspective, and I wanted to play it back. For me, I've learned a lot from this. But my challenge to you is take something from this. Go work on it yourself, right? If you want to be something, if you want to do something, you are the only one that's going to make that happen. Sure, you're going to be dealt some cards, you're going to get some opportunities, but if you're not willing to learn, if you're not willing to try, if you're not willing to problem solve, if you're not willing to take action, if you're not willing to get your hands dirty, it's just, I don't know, I've got nothing to say to you. I'm sorry. I appreciate you being here. If you want to continue the conversation, if you've got some insights from this, or you've listened to Alex Homozi or whatever, let's continue the conversation. Chuck a comment down below. You can ask a question as well. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this episode, please, like, subscribe. But if you think someone else needs to hear this and have a good speaking to, share it with them and tell them to have a listen. And that would mean the absolute world to me, because my goal is to help others. I want to see others aspire further in their own lives. So my job is to inspire you to do that with this podcast of Further Your Lifestyle. So appreciate you being here. We'll be back here again next week, doing it all again. You have a wonderful day. Cheers.